Welcome back, everyone. So we have Parijit Agrawal, who's the head fixed income from Union AMC, and his topic is bond markets: the way ahead. Over to you, Parijit. Parijit,
Yeah.
can you share your screen so that everyone can
Yes,
see your
please.
presentation?
Yeah. I'll do that. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. So what I thought, markets have been extremely volatile, the interest rates market and the forex market, and with inflation running at all-time high kind of a thing globally. So I thought, let's see that uh, in such a scenario when the markets are extremely volatile, it becomes extremely important for a practitioner, obviously for fund managers to take a decision which is anchored and which is based on certain analysis. So we at our fund house, over the years, we have continued to evolve and develop tools to take a decision which is anchored to some analysis, some mathematical models, so that the decision is always consistent and in line with the objectives that we have set ourselves for. So a brief snapshot of that. The obviously the topic is very large, so I have collected a few slides to share with you, and I hope it's useful for all of us here. So today, when we see that that rates are going to go up, and people are a little scared that the good times are over. So obvious thing is to ask that, is it correct to think like that way? So what we have done in this slide that you can see, that we have looked at the historical data to understand that how the yield curve is going to shape out over the coming years or in the near to medium term. This data point is from 2001. So first thing that we did was that we have taken a spread, which is we call between the 3 month treasury bill and 10-year GSEC. So now if you see in the this chart is as of yesterday. So the steepness of the curve is as steep as 282 basis points. If you take the mean of the last 20 years, it is actually 108 basis points. The median is somewhere 90 basis points. So if you rank them and after normalizing and it shows obviously a very high percentile. It is close to 91.66 percentile. What it means is that the steepness is almost at the peak, and the probability of this steep curve going much ahead of this probability is very less. So the steepness would be coming down. We could see a more of a flattening curve. That's what tells us. But obviously how it is going to happen. So our view is that based on these analysis that the shorter end may go up, but the long end may remain anchored. So that's how we look at it. If you see the next slide again, because we need to understand much more data points. This we have done for 5-year G6 and 10-year G7. The spread as of now is 65 basis points. The median is 14 basis points for the last 20 years. And it is at a peak. Almost the percentile is 93.97 percentile. Obviously, this is again showing us that the steepness is very high, historically very high, and it has to correct. And this tells us that where you need to put your investments, where you need to put your money. The third part is that we have taken for the corporate bonds. Here, what we have done is we have analyzed 2-year spread and 10-year spread. So basically, what we have seen is that the spread of 10-year over a 2-year is 184 basis points. The median for the last 20 years has been only 33 basis points. It is extremely steep, and it is as high as 87.81 percentile. So the probability of steepness is, I would say, minimal going forward. Rather, the curve will compress, the spreads would compress. So when you look at the various maturities and the various instruments, and you take a historical analysis, it tells us that we are at extremes, the steepness of the curve, and going forward, the probability of steepness to correct or to compress is much higher than steepening further. So that gives us a good way to analyze and base our decisions at which part of the curve we are going to make money. Similarly, we have done for the the spread between a 5 year and a 2 year AAA rated PSU bonds. The picture is very similar. We are almost at the peak, close to 82.18 percentile is the steepness of the curve. So obviously, if you look at the last four slides, it tells you that the steepness is bound to compress. That's where we are today. So how exactly is the curve going to shape out in the near to medium term? The analysis shows us that the short term rates may go up, but the longer term, what we expect is that it's not going to run away steeply. It would remain range bound, and that's the steepness is going to compress. This is one very interesting study that we have done. That what we have done is that what is the relative sovereign risk profile for the various emerging market countries. Why we have done that? In the last couple of years, we have seen that our FX reserves has ballooned to $650 billion. Now, is this going to remain? Is it going to increase, or is it going to go out? Because that's very important to understand how the rates are also going to pan out in the near to medium term. For that, what we have done, there are 27 companies in the Morgan Stanley emerging market index. There are 23 companies here. For the four companies, we could not get data. So what we have done is that we have taken the real yield. Real yield is basically your the 10-year GSEC minus your inflation rate for each country. And in order to understand their attractiveness, we have divided it by 5-year CDS spread, and we have ranked them. So on the basis of that, what we see is that India, among all these countries, 27 countries, is ranked much higher. Its rank is at 8. And similarly, if I see the probability of default, 1 year default probability for each country, there also India stands top. Our rank is 8. What it tells me is that India would continue to remain as a favored investment destination going forward from this among the emerging market countries. So that gives us a good confidence that yes, the flows that we have seen in would continue, and the probability of outflows uh, are minimal. I all would say is that not as high as the inflows are in. So that's also going to define how the domestic rate scenario is going to be, how the bond markets are going to behave. This is another chart, very interesting study we have done is that this talks about Fed's balance sheet and the US interest rate and the so-called taper tantrum that we keep hearing about, every now and then, and how it is going to affect the world economy, the domestic rates, the forex market. We have plotted US balance sheet, the Federal Reserve balance sheet from 2007 onwards, from the first we started in 2008 onwards. So from there, $1 trillion, we have seen is that the balance sheet expanded to close to $8 trillion, or in 2021, and the the data points towards, and we have also plotted the 2 year, 5 year, and 10-year US rates, and how it has moved along with the QE happening and QE tapering. Basically, when they stop buying, purchasing assets from the market. So what we see is that US rates have fallen once QE is announced and then keeps rising as the QE is in progress. It peaks out within the QE and falls sharply as the QE is paid down again. So this has been seen in 2007-8, 2013, then again, and the pattern we are noticing now. So the question to ask is that that what we are talking about, that it will cause outflows from our the domestic market. The rates will go up because US rates are going to go up. But the historical data and analysis shows, it's a question mark that it has actually rates have started to fall once the situation has become normal. So that's a big question mark, and we need to keep looking for that. That whether it follows the same pattern that we have seen in the last three QEs, or it changes. But so far, the data points, it's going to follow the same pattern. See, volatility around inflation, taper timeline, pace, and quantum would continue in the markets. That's what is going to be there. Another tool to look at, how the world markets are going to shape up. There is one, what economic policy uncertainty index is there. It is falling sharply. It was highly uncertain, but it is falling sharply. But it is still higher than averages. And as the taper and tantrums around we are progressing, we'll see that the uncertainty would start reducing more and more. However, the data suggests that eventually rates move downwards thereon, and as observed during all previous quantitative easings, we have seen that. So, are we in that period that rates would start falling again after touching a peak? So that's a question. From the same pattern, let me come out to our domestic market about the what we call is the liquidity that is there in the banking system. Just to share with you that the our system had remained in deficit. The domestic banking liquidity has remained in deficit historically, and this chart, which is anything above zero, on the above the x-axis positive, means the liquidity is deficit, and anything which is below, which is shows in negative, means the liquidity is in excess. So if you see, the liquidity was always remained deficient, but from 2000, I would say 15, 16 onwards, started moving into surplus. It is not that only in the last 1.5 years when RBI started on easy monetary policy that we have seen liquid to balloon in the domestic system. It had actually started in 15, 16, and that largely depends upon how our forex reserves had started inching up from the 2015-16 onwards, basically after the 2013 when RBI started buying or accumulating forex reserves. So that has been a big part of that. So as of now, yes, we are in a extremely excess uh, liquidity surplus. Is it going to go away? Our sense, based on the what the previous charts and this chart shows, that liquidity surplus is going to remain at least for some more time, or maybe for a longer period of time than anticipated. And I would say that that's is a good sign for the domestic rate market. This one is another chart that we have plotted, and we have taken data way back up to again for from 2010 onwards, but on the chart we're showing from 2016. We have taken the credit and deposit ratios and plotted for the last 10 years, and what we have seen is that in the last almost 3 years, we have seen that the credit has remained in a single digit, around 6 to 7%. However, deposits have remained in double digits, around 9 to 12%. Now, is that this lower credit growth or it has been only a part in the last few years because of the pandemic? If you see this chart, it had actually started dipping down from 2000 August 2018 onwards, and that actually coincides with when we had seen that ILFS down default had happened in August 2018. From that point onwards, the credit growth has actually started going down, and deposits have picked up, or it has remained in a range bound range, I would say between 9 to 10%. So, a higher deposit, lower credit also fuels in liquidity. It puts pressure on the FD rates.
Parijit,
So, yeah,
I am so sorry to interrupt you, but I guess your slides are not moving. Can you try moving it?
it is showing me moving at my end. So still not moving?
No. Can now it is, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now it is moving? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Shift F5. Shift F5 से ये slide से repeat
Hmm.
करो. Shift.
Yeah. So, I was talking about the credit deposit, rate of SCBs. So that higher savings and low investment dynamics to, would help us to keep the, what the rates as I mentioned, to be benign going forward. Now, there has a lot of been talk about, or worries about the inflation outlook. So what we did was that we tried to understand that is this going to remain for a long period of time, or how is it going to come down, or what are the tools which has worked in the past. So what we did was that we took out data for almost all the emerging market countries, looked at them, that whether the inflation targeting has actually worked in these countries or not. To our good surprise, we realized that the inflation targeting has actually worked to anchor inflation expectations in most of the emerging market countries. So the big question, that has it worked in India? Yes, we started in 2016, and it is has worked, and we expect it to continue working. So our view that inflation is temporarily elevated. On a longer term basis, the the inflation targeting would help it to cool down, and it would be within the target zone. This is another very interesting chart that we have analyzed, and this is again on longer term inflation outlook. Obviously, today, we have seen that the higher supply disruptions, the energy shocks, shortages, and so many other issues have pushed the inflation expectations higher, and actually inflation is running very high globally, not only in India but globally. We have seen that happening in US, the UK, and even the eurozone also. But if we need to understand that how it has shaped the inflation, and whether it has moved up on a longer term basis, so what for that we did was that we have taken the data for total factor productivity, and the wages as a percentage of GDP, because wages and compensation actually impart an uptick in inflation, and factor productivity is what helps us to push the prices down. So what we have noticed is that actually the technology has increased efficiency multifold, and has pushed the prices down, and it has continued to do so. It has, and it shows in the total factor productivity, which is proxy for the technology. And the sustained wages and compensation, which, as I mentioned, are significant factors for inflationary pressures, they have actually started falling down over the years. If you see from this chart, so labor compensation as a percentage of GDP is falling, but the total factor productivity is going up. This shows that a longer term inflation outlook is very, very benign. It is expected to move downwards. This is what this analysis shows us. So yes, temporary, we have seen that there has been labor shortages in US, wages have moved up, but it's going to be temporary. It is not a permanent fixture. If this, chart is to be believed, this is how it is going to pan out. And the one more factor which I would touch upon is on growth. What we do at our fund house is that we actually look at how the various high frequency indicators are actually looking at. So we have taken 29 high frequency leading indicators. There are 29 of them, and we bucket them in. We have taken four buckets: your investments, consumption, ease of living, and where CPI, WPI data is there, and then we have external sector. So to understand how these data points are shaping out, we have data going back to 2000, and we have back tested these data points also, and then we have normalized this series from the four bucket into one. And this we have plotted it against the actual GDP data. In order to make it easier, we have taken a percentile of the GDP rather than the actual number, so that it's easier for us to plot and see, so that it takes out the noises from the various data points. This is a statistical method that we employed, and what we notice is that the high frequency leading indicator was showing a downward trend from way back from 2016-17 onwards. It's nothing to do with the last 2 years of pandemic, or 2019 onwards, when GDP actually started showing a downward trend. It was actually showing a downward trend from 2016-17 onwards, this indicator. And what it means is that there is a substantial slack in the economy, and it is also evident by the capacity utilization. And this factor also puts a question mark, and one may ask this question: has the potential growth itself has fallen, or is it that this slack in capacity utilization is only temporary, because it has been going on for a number of years? So that's a big question to ask, whether the potential itself has fallen. So that's a very, very big question that we need to understand, because that is what is going to shape up the the going forward way, what our growth would be in the domestic market. And the another factor which is hinting towards is that these data points is that the consumer sentiment survey shows that the sentiment remains dampened. It has still not come out. The another factor to which tells us from these data points is that the informal sector has got hit very, very badly in the last 2 years, and for it to come back to pre-COVID levels, it's going to take much, much longer. It will take much longer than whatever we have anticipated, or whatever the data points are showing at it. So this data point shows us that the longer term growth would take much, much longer to come back to pre-COVID levels. And as such, pre-COVID levels, growth itself had started contracting. So on an average, I would say it's maybe another 2 to 3 years ahead, where we can start seeing some kind of a longer term growth rate picking up. Longer term means that I'm looking at a 3-year average kind of a thing before the pre-COVID. So that's where is actual thing is there. So from that angle, the uncertainty on the growth factor and uneven growth and longer term inflation expectations expected to go down and the various other parameters which I shared with you tells us that that India is a good investment avenue. Flows are expected to continue, and we could continue to see benign rates, or rather uh, softer rates going forward also, even after RBI starts normalizing the policy rates. So there, I would stop here and leave you with the thoughts and views that which I have shared with you. Yeah. So there we are.
Thank you, Parijit. It was an insightful session. So, thank you so very much. Now, we'll move on to our next session. So, I will request all the attendees to please stay connected and we'll be right back in 10 seconds. Thank you. Thank you so much, Parijit.
Yeah. Thank you.